You want to run into the next one? Yes. All right. As a reminder, we are going to be breaking at noon. So we would love for everybody to be able to come back if possible. Take your time to get your water and coffee. But we're going to move forward into the next conversation. So the next conversation we have is going outside, money, mindsets, and traveling. So obviously this panel is all about traveling. We'll be talking about solo travel, travel planning in 2022, and the impact of Web3. So people we have today are Ezza Naveed, women's mobility activist, and Gabby Beckford, content creator and Gen Z travel expert, joining us now as well. I'll allow both of you all to intro yourselves to kind of give one or two lines of who you are and why you're with us today. So Gabby, I'll let you go first.
Sure. Hi, y'all. Thanks for having me. I'm Gabby Beckford. I am a travel content creator and travel expert. I travel full-time, all the time, digital nomad. That's what I love to do, so I'm happy to talk about it today.
Hi everyone, my name is Ezza. I grew up in Pakistan, and that's going to be very central to my story, as you'll see through this conversation. I went to this college called Minerva that started in 2017. TLDR, or summary, is that it's a nomadic college spread across 7 countries that we live in for 4 years of undergrad. So I just finished that. I love traveling. I've been solo traveling for a while, and yeah, super happy to be here.
Yeah, thank you both for joining us. Now I'm jealous. So how long have both of you been taking solo trips?
I grew up in a family that traveled for fun. My dad was in the military, so I took my first solo trip when I was 17. I went to high school in a very small Virginia, Confederate flag type town. So after high school, I was like, yeah, we need to get out. Yeah, I was like, yeah, Stafford, Virginia.
I'm from Tazewell, we not far from each other.
You know how it is. Yeah, right? So after that, I was like, I need to really set myself up for success in college and sort of in terms of my mindset. So I took my first solo trip at 17. I went to Iceland solo to go backpacking. Never trained for backpacking. I had no business doing it, but that's what I did.
Izza, how about yourself?
Yeah, so I first started traveling when I was 19, so I was 2017. But my first solo trip was to Patagonia in February 2020. And basically it happened not because I was very determined to solo travel. I knew that's something I wanted to do one day, but my best friend flaked on me.
Ooh, wow.
And it was one of the best things that happened to me. And I still thank her for this day because, that was where my adventure spirit really came forward. Yeah.
Yeah, I love to hear that about how you said it's one of the best things that ever happened to you. And then Gabby, with you said you had to do it to kind of explore and learn about yourself. Is there anything that you learned in the process of doing that solo traveling that's helped just develop and grow as an individual?
Yeah, there's so much I can share here, but there's one story that really comes to my mind, and I'm not sure if you're familiar with this show Unorthodox, but it's a story about a woman that grew up in a Hasidic community in upstate, in some part of New York, close to the upstate, and she was oppressed for most of her life because of the cultural norms she experienced. And I bring that story forward to explain my own story because I grew up in a very conservative town in Pakistan. And the first time I was able to go on a grocery store by myself was when I was 19 years old in San Francisco. And this was only 5 years ago. And so my mobility was very constrained, or my access to outdoor spaces was quite constrained. And one thing I had internalized is that I don't have the power within me to do the things I really want to do, just because I'm consistently told that as a girl I can't do a lot, and as a girl most of the world is locked to me and I can't access it. And so one of the most amazing moments I had was one of my solo travels in Scotland. This was late 2020. Yes, I was traveling safely during the pandemic. I was hiking with a friend, and I ascended one of the tallest peaks of the island of UK. And we made it to one top off a peak. And he's like, oh, there's like 3 more tops that we can race to. And so we do that. And by the time I was at the 3rd peak, like I started crying because I told him like, this is a freedom that I haven't experienced growing up at all. Like growing up, it's frowned upon when I decided to do an internship or leave my house for that. It's frowned upon when I go for walks. And now I am like traversing the backs of mountains. And so it really, really taught me that I have the power within me. And just like the girl in Unorthodox, she stood in a lake in Berlin when she realized her freedom. And she took off her wig as a symbol for like parts of the culture she wants to take and what she wants to shed away. I felt quite similarly because I took out a pair of scissors and very dramatically chopped off parts of my hair to indicate something similar. But yes.
That's great.
Yeah.
Really happy for you there. Gabby, how about yourself?
That's like the most powerful story ever.
Yeah, that was great.
Yeah, like I said, I traveled a lot when I was younger because of my family, a military family. My dad was in the Marine Corps. So I lived in Japan. I was born in San Diego. I lived in Virginia. I lived in Kansas. And then my dad was like, you know what? Good idea. Let's stop in like a super small town in Virginia. So I went to high school there. It just wasn't what I knew like mindset was. Like I didn't have people I could relate to as easily. I didn't have like the adventures I want to have. What people were interested there, I wasn't interested in. So I knew I wanted to go into college and like find the people that I resonated with. So I did my first solo trip on a whim. I think this is like a big pattern in my life. I think I was Googling ways to travel at 17 and I Googled it. And I found a program in Iceland that was just 4 days backpacking. So I flew to Iceland. I spent a week in Reykjavik. I didn't know that you had to be 22 to drink in Iceland, so I was 17, and I did not have the fun and European adventure I thought I would have, sadly. But it was beautiful. It was like a culture completely separate from what I'd known. I was 17, so like, I don't know, I was getting older. I was like, wow, this is me traveling by myself for the first time. This is me walking into hotels without my parents and like having those first experiences. And then it came to backpacking, and I was like really bad at it. And I was at the back of the pack, and I was like, damn, y'all really like running up these hills. And yeah, it was really difficult. And I don't like the cold, so I don't know why I went to Iceland. And it was really hard. And there were moments where I forgot a sleeping bag actually, which is a long story, but I was like this girl was nice and let me stuff into her sleeping bag. And I was like back to back with her, and it was 2 a.m., so it was super bright because it was the summer, and I'm like just crying. And I'm like, damn, this is hard. But I was so happy. And I was actually crying from happiness. I was like, this is so hard, but this is one of the happiest moments of my life. And I'm challenging myself. I'm learning so much about myself. I am having happier moments here in like a really hard environment than I was at home. And I knew from then I wanted to do this like forever. It was really awesome, really empowering.
I just have to ask questions now because I can't answer any stories to kind of go with both of those. Like to both of you, like what does the trip planning process look like? Like what factors do you look for, especially obviously traveling solo as women? Is safety important? Is it aesthetics? Is budget? Like what kind of factors are you looking at?
Yeah, thank you so much also, Gabby. I really loved hearing that. Yeah, so definitely my identity as a woman or like my safety as a woman is always really important also because I need to let my family know that I'm safe. So when I am traveling or picking a destination, I usually search like what are women talking about the destination in some of the Facebook groups. If there are any forums I can like search or find through Google, but mostly I honestly go through a lot of like Facebook or WhatsApp conversations to find existing conversations or like start threads for like to get new information. I always set like an inbound and an outbound flight to a certain region, and then in the middle I like to leave the space like very empty, very free for like things I want to do and things that I would enjoy doing. So when it says a lot of my like traveling is like based in nature, so when I went to Patagonia, for example, it was like, okay, I'm gonna fly to El Calafate and fly out, and then in the middle, I'll hitchhike, I'll get a bus, and that's exactly what happened. And I made my way around, and I was able to hike, which was the primary goal of going. So safety is very important. For budget, I really like to travel cheap, and I encourage most of my friends to do the same. I am very anti-hostels. Sometimes I do Airbnbs if they're fun. There was one in Washington which was a yurt next to a hippie bus. I stayed there. That was really nice. But I usually use couch surfing. And I usually see if there's any existing friends or family, because for me, like, the main purpose of traveling is to step outside myself and step outside my world. So if I'm within the walls of a hotel and going to the beach, like, no, 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 no. Like, I want to stay with a local in the back streets of Scotland and then understand, like, what the country is like from their perspective versus in, like, a very artificial curated environment.
Gabby, how about yourself?
When it comes to the trip planning process for me, I will start by sourcing information. Just like Ezza said, I'll start in Facebook groups. I love the search function. I'm gonna look through old conversations. I have a platform now, so I'll like post and say, hey, does anyone live here? Did anyone have tips, especially women of color? I'm looking for like the Black Girl's Guide too, for myself. So, so yeah, I find communities like that. And then, you know what I love to do is I'll look for, on Google Maps, you can save places you like. Yep. I will stalk online and I'll ask my friends to like download it to my Google Maps. So like I can open my Google Maps and those saved places are already there. So I'll do that maybe a week or two before my trip. And when I land and I, like Ezza said, I'll leave some space in my itinerary for spontaneity, for opportunity. I'll plan like where I'm gonna stay and then I'll leave kind of things open. I can just open that map up and be like, mac and cheese, yep. So it's like a framework of where I want to go and what I want to do, but I leave it open to meeting someone at the hotel like lobby and getting pulled into their group trip or into what they're doing today. That's how I like to travel because yeah, like she said, I want to experience it the local way. As far as budget, I like to try to do budget luxury when I can. I don't want to have a college dorm experience anymore, so I also avoid hostels, especially with the pandemic. That's made me really like health conscious. So I'll stay in short-term rental apartments or hostels, but I'll stay in a one room in a hostel, like my own room. So I have my privacy, but I have like community.
Oh, that budget luxury, I'm still in that one.
That's a lifestyle.
Yeah, there you go. I also thought it was interesting too that both of you kind of said that you're really open to exploring the culture. I think that that's really great in terms of kind of even going to now with some of the intersectionality we've been discussing with the metaverse and Web3, but having us more of an actual, really being a more global economy, more of a multicultural society as well. I think one of the things I realized, and I just got back from 6 weeks abroad myself, is I realized that America, we kind of really live in this very capitalistic mindset. So in terms of that, it's like we work on the go all the time, right? And I don't want to talk, if there's anybody HR listening, I don't want to get anybody in trouble over here, but I think about the aspect of like, even if you go to Europe or you go to France, they have holiday and they have 6 weeks, you have to take it. Like in the city of Paris, you legally don't have to respond to an email after 6:30. Like if you miss it, they cannot fire you. But at the same time, here in the States, we get 14 days is a good vacation time for PTO. Right, and if you went to your boss like, hey, I'm gonna do this 2 weeks in a row, they're gonna look, what the hell you mean you about to do 2 weeks in a row?
Yeah.
So it's like, that's the aspect of it's work all the time. Yeah. Whereas even your two experience of how you saying you were crying tears of joy sleeping in the sleeping bag, and then your experience of going as well for being in Patagonia, it was the freedom. And for me, that translates into abundance. A lot of times we look at abundance here in the States as financial equity, whereas a lot of the rest of the world, because not to mitigate circumstances, while they might not be as first order financially as well off as we are, they're not worried about that. They find abundance and happiness in other things that aren't rooted in, materialistic things. So
100%.
So kind of moving forward from that though, is it knowing your interest in Web3 and love for travel, how do you see the two combining forces for new experiences? Like, have you traveled in the metaverse?
Yeah, I really love this question. And I also really appreciate your point about the perception expanding. I have traveled in the metaverse. I used to be a very avid traveler. These days, because like given my background, for me it's much more appealing to experience the world outside now. There are like some of my favorite stories are honestly from, I would say, the early days of the metaverse. So let's go back to 2011. Ezza was in middle school. She lives in Abbottabad, and she's very, very bored because her routine, or like her life, is within the walls of her house and within the walls of her school. So if she wants to experience the outside world or what's out there, she goes to the internet, and she goes through different like tools there and different platforms there. So I don't know if any one of you is aware of Club Penguin. You should talk to your kids. But it was this, yeah, I see a Gen Z-ish person in the back. But it was basically this platform where everybody's a little penguin, and it's a virtual chat room. You can talk to other kids. So I had a very adjacent website to that called KidsCom, and I became really good friends with some of the players there. One of the players and I, we connected through Facebook and became really good friends. He was also a 13-year-old who lived in Serbia. We used to call all the time. I talked to some of his friends there. I got to learn a lot about Serbia. I got to learn a lot about Europe. I didn't know Serbia was a country before 2011. And it was really exciting. Then 5 years pass, or 6 years, and we're both applying for colleges. He comes from a family that's very resource constrained. I grew up with more financial freedom in Pakistan. And so I tell him all the programs I'm applying to, including Minerva, the university I went to, which was very like selective. So I tell him like, it's so cool. We'll get to travel to all these countries. Like, you should apply. It'll be fun. And he's like, oh, but it's like only 1.8%. Like, I don't think I'll be able to get in. And I apply and I get in. He's like, oh, I think I can get in too. So then he applies. He's just like, oh, you got in. And then we faced a hurdle because he didn't have the financial means to buy his ticket. And even despite the scholarship, he didn't have the money to pay the deposit. So then what do? We ran a international campaign to gather funds for his journey. And we raised at the time between $3,000 to $4,000 US, which I know sounds like nothing. But in PKR in 2017, for high school students talking about her online Club Penguin friends, like, it was a huge deal. So strangers from all over the world funded his journey. And then we met in San Francisco for the first time in fall 2017. And that was really magical. And I think like that was one story out of like, I think one of the coolest stories, but through like Club Penguin and like, you know, that part of the metaverse, I got to talk and learn from a lot of kids and understand a lot of perspectives, which I was very much like shielded from in Pakistan, for better or for worse. And so yeah, I expanded, I grew as a person, I helped my childhood best friend get to college, and I think that was one of the coolest travel stories I have.
Oh, that's great. Kudos to you. So $3,000 or $4,000 is a lot. Like, don't minimize what you were able to do in that. So
Thank
kudos
you.
to you. Gabby, for you, I'm sure everybody's wondering, what is a digital nomad?
So I think there's been a huge uptick in talk about remote work with the pandemic. Everyone's working from home. Like, what is remote work? And really, being a digital nomad is working remotely in a state of transition. So working remotely and traveling. I usually say, like, if you're moving, like, every few months, or for me, it was as much as like every few days or every few weeks, you're a digital nomad. You know, you are working from your tools, your technology, your laptop, your phone, and you're making money from your home country, but you're living in a different place. And that's, yeah, being a digital nomad is the dream.
What barriers are like to the access to being able to become a digital nomad have you seen?
Yeah, I think the first one I'll say is just knowledge, awareness. Like, people maybe hear the word digital nomad and they say, what does that really mean? Like, I'm working from my laptop. Like, how do I get internet in these places? Where should I go? Like, what hours? The time zones can be crazy. Like, what does it actually look like to be working and be a digital nomad? And then, of course, there's normal barriers like financial barriers. Family, like, a lot of people have to support their families, especially if you're younger. You know, familial ties, being away from your family for months or weeks or years at a time, it's, yeah, things that you juggle as a full-time digital nomad. But I'll say the biggest one is awareness, and then, I mean, access as far as like companies that allow it. There was a big uptick in remote work where everyone's working from home, and then you're like, okay, I'm gonna work from like Florida this week. Who's gonna say something? But when you go abroad, you know, it's bigger considerations, and yeah. So I think awareness for the consumer, like the person being a digital nomad, but also companies knowing what that looks like, knowing what that productivity level looks like, how does it actually work. Yeah, it's pretty new.
Have you, I guess, how do you go about providing credibility in terms of the workloads? Like obviously, be like, oh, how are you going to be as efficient if you're not in the office? How do you go about like addressing that concern?
I love this question because I love to tell the story of how I was 24, living in Fairfax, Virginia, commuting an hour and a half to Baltimore to work my engineering job, waking up at 4 a.m. so I could leave by 5 to avoid the DC DMV traffic, to get to Baltimore, sit in my office with my eyes like half twitching for 8 hours to do a job that I was just doing from my laptop that I could have been doing anywhere, doing it from Baltimore, just to leave at 3 to also try to miss most of the traffic, to get home at 5:30 and then be a human being around my family and like do my content creation on the side. Like that was the unsustainable business model. But that was what was expected to me in a corporate job, you know, working for like a government contractor. So the more I could, so in that role, the more I could convince my boss, like, hey, I promise I'm more productive when I'm not exhausted. I promise I'm more productive when I can not worry about my dog being in its crate all day. I can like, you know, walk my dog. I'm more productive when I'm abroad, visiting family in Jamaica, and like, you know, have a better quality of life makes me a more productive worker. And also it gives me the freedom to time manage myself. I like to wake up in the morning. I'm a morning person. So I like to work 5 a.m. to 2, take a siesta, and go back to work. You know, I mean, the siesta might be at the beach. That's okay. But the work gets done because I can do what's best for me and like my ADHD and, you know, my lifestyle. So the more freedom we give to good people who are committed to a company's mission, and let them do what they need to do the way they want to do it, it's better for everybody.
I mean, that's great. I love that. That's a great example because a lot of times people don't think about the actual, if I'm commuting, it's the same process, right? If I'm commuting an hour and a half, I have to wake up, but even then it's just affecting my overall work-life balance. And also, who are you to tell me how my work-life balance is going to be? I can be more efficient on the road. Yeah. So to that point, so transitioning from that, as you're working on productivity, or even in terms of you're going about navigating your journey for both of you, like do you use any Google products to help you navigate your travels? Like if so, why, how, which ones?
Yeah, I hope you noticed my smile, Evan, because like when I think when the organizers first reached out to me, I was just like so excited because I was like, oh my god, this is great. Yes, there's quite a few products I use, but I think two of my favorite are Google Lens. There's been many times, and I know it gets better with time and with more data, but there's been many times where I've used Google Lens and pointed it at a board in Argentina and be like, what does this Spanish mean? Because I don't speak Spanish. Or there's been times where like I've pointed it to some meat I couldn't identify to get my best guesses, like, oh, is this imitation meat without a label? Is this chicken or is this pork, which I can't eat? And I think that's been very helpful when in moments where like I can't talk to people, to not have to depend on anyone and just point my phone and be like, okay, this is really good. And I always wondered, like, why is this so under advertised? Like,
I've never heard of that.
Most people don't know. Like, the reason I knew is because I had a Pixel and it came inside my phone.
Yep.
And the other tool I really like is Google Translate in its offline version. Mm-hmm. And so one of my favorite times was like hiking for like 10 hours in Argentina, and this really friendly nurse comes up to me and I have no idea what she's saying. And so we kept texting to each other and showing, like flipping my phone through like 2 hours that we hiked together just to sort of like connect and have a common language. So for me, like Google Lens and Google Translate are like have been game changers when I've been out and traveling. Yeah.
I'm an advocate for Google Translate as well. I was utilizing when I was in Greece. I couldn't figure out how to use this washing machine. I was able to just hover it over there. I was like, oh yeah, I got it. Here we go. 15-minute cycle. Also, this might sound a little weird, but like as a single guy as well, Google Translate is a game changer. I'll leave it at that.
Hey.
Gabby, I'll turn that over to you as well. Which products are you utilizing?
Yeah, actually, so I knew this was a question. I was like, let me like see. So on my phone, I didn't even realize I did this, but I have a little widget on my iPhone like just for Google products because that's how many that I use, and I didn't even realize it. So I use Google Maps, like I mentioned, to save destinations that I want to go to in a certain location. It's as simple as downloading my friends, I guess, and like having it instant populate when I go to a different city. When I was just to get this trip booked here, girl, I had like so many travel issues and I had to rebook my flight a few times. It's crazy. But I have Google Travel where you can open it and it will show you your itinerary, like what hotel you have booked, what flight your like flight path is, what other things you have booked via your Gmail. So I love that feature. Google Translate, something that I utilize all the time. My stepmom is Japanese, so my little sisters are Jamaican Japanese. They're so cute. But we go to Japan often, and we'll travel together, and they speak Japanese. But I'm like, I'm a solo traveler. Like, give me some time to myself. And Japanese is not a language that you can guess.
Right.
Like, it's just not happening. So it's imperative if I'm at a restaurant to have Google Translate to be able to translate like cow tongue versus like beef tenderloin. So I use Google Translate all the time. Google Earth, during the pandemic, I was sitting in my mom's house, like going insane like everybody else. And I would go on Google Earth and be like, let's go to Fiji today. So yeah, there's so many products that I use in all the
Don't
time.
you use Google Docs as well with your parents?
Yes, I do, yeah. So I have a story where my dad is Jamaican. I'm first generation. He moved here when he was 15, and so he's like, traveling by yourself, like mentally ill. So he used to make me fill out full itineraries of my trip and like do the STEP program with the State Department on every single trip, and it was getting to be a little bit too much. So we use Google Docs, and I would put my full itinerary in there, and like I said, I allow for spontaneity, and like, I'm gonna be dragged off to Republic of Georgia today. So if my trip changes, I'll just change it in my own Google Doc, and he has access to it, so he doesn't have to message me 1,000 times. He can just look at the doc and see the new address of the hotel, and he's crazy. He'll like call the hotel and be like, "Is this the real number, or you just put in that doc?" So yeah, we use Google Docs a lot, and it's nice. I do it with my friends too when we plan a group trip. I'm like, look at the Google Doc. You can fill it in, like fill in where you want to go on these days, or like highlight the places that you want to go to, like because we can prioritize it. So yeah, I use that a lot.
I want to jump in and share
Go
two
ahead.
things that this inspired me. So one thing I forgot to mention is Google Maps in offline mode has been a game changer, especially in areas when I know I won't have internet access. Like there was basically no internet in Patagonia, and I was like, okay, it shows me the driving distance from point A to point B. I don't know why it doesn't download information for walking distance. I'm like, okay, I am a car. Let me go this way, and it works out. And as a second thing that I really like is Google Voice. I think it's very
Yes.
underutilized as a product. It's like being with Minerva, like we knew we had to like change countries like every 4 months on average. And so what information do we put for my Bank of America account, or what information do I put for like other products like financial services, especially that need to like text me, or Facebook needs to text me and verify me. Like I don't have access to my Pakistan or like US SIM card in Korea. And so I linked all of my information to my Google Voice, and that really made a big difference.
Yeah, I'll add it just quickly on solo travel as a woman. Like, you know, I'll share my first name. I don't want to give out like maybe my social media all the time, but I do want to connect with people. So my WhatsApp is connected to my Google Voice number, so that if they see that number, it's not going to tell them like where I live. It's a number that I can create, and I also use it for the same reason, for verification, because I changed my SIM cards, and it's huge. Like you need to like have instant access to an email or something, and it asks you to verify. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Both of those examples are very like great use cases for that as well. I would also say even from like the Google Maps offline, when we were in Accra, we got picked up from the airport and we were going to our Airbnb. So we had a driver and we had this wonderful guy named Sam. But he kept getting lost. So literally, what like would have been a 45-minute ride ended up being an hour and 45 minutes because this dude stopped 5 times and was literally getting out and asking for directions on the side of the road. So I showed him like, hey, no, we're gonna use Google Maps. He looked dead at me and was like, this is Africa. That only works in the U.S. And I'm like, no, this is a satellite. That's not how this works. And then like after that, but then now this was the first day. By the time we got now, like Sam, you know where we're going? I got Google Maps. Swear to God. And he was like, it is like changed his whole perception of it, and now for him to be able to utilize that. So, what are some things Google can do to better aid Gen Z when it comes to travel and planning that goes into it?
Yeah, I think first, like, there's a lot of things that come to mind, but I think a lot of these products which are tools for traveling should be advertised. Like, this information should not be coming from like two Gen Zs and word of mouth. Like there should be more targeted campaigns to like let people know how these tools can be used, because a lot of us had to figure out these use cases. But they're there. They just need to be advertised. And I think apart from this, my personal big pain has been the fact that there is only driving mode on offline maps. Even though it's a small feature, it makes such a big difference between I don't drive, so I don't have a car, and it's like, I can only walk from point A to point B, but Google Maps can only tell me a driving distance in like a remote town in Europe. Like, how do I get around this? So I think having the optionality of like being able to walk should be a feature that's added, and like could be very useful for a lot of people that like traveling to remote places. Those are some of the things I have in mind, and I think like for me personally, like everything else is super solid. Those stand out.
How about yourself?
When I think of certain use cases where I was like, dang, I wish I could do this. When I use Google Travel, when it auto-populates an itinerary for me, which is awesome, it would be great to be able to like add notes to that, because I use it as an active trip planner. So if I could just put in notes, or my friends could like make it a Google Doc type interactive itinerary that we all share, or I could see my friends, like she's flying from California, I'm flying from DC, but we're both flying to London, have them be together somehow. Like that would be awesome, like a collaborative features to the.
Okay, and I would just add to that, there'd be like I wish there was like a Google currency converter that I did not have to necessarily go online to search. When you Google it, actually online it pops up. Like for example, like when you're the euro isn't that big of a difference. Even before now we're even, but before that I'm not really worried about. Okay, 70 euros. Okay, this is $75. I worry about. But when I'm in Ghana, and it's 10 CDs to every US dollar, and I'm looking at this million, this is 40,000 CDs. I need to know how much I'm actually spending, right? So if I don't, but I might not have Wi-Fi access, or if I'm going to one of these local markets in South America, or going to one of these local markets in Ghana, at the same time, there might not be Wi-Fi access. So this guy's asking me, I need 3,000 CDs. I need to be able to quickly tell how much the CDs. I have the cash, but how much am I actually spending in US dollars as well? So that would be a actually proper use case for me. And actually doing transactions, because a lot of companies you can't do credit card. You all know in some of these remote towns they only do cash, or they don't even if they do credit card, they don't want to pay the service fee on it because they can't afford it.
True. Yeah.
+1.
Now we're going to get into the Q&A portion. So we'd love to kind of open the floor if anybody has any questions. We got one.
Hello, I'm Tim. Also, shout out to Club Penguin. I was on there many years ago.
Club Penguin forever.
I was just curious. You both, I believe, mentioned that you started solo traveling around your late teens. And, there are many folks who have come of age to that age in the last few years, and then COVID hit, and now we're in inflation. Like, how, for like those specific like young teenagers that are thinking about exploring the world but are facing those constraints, like how have you perceived anything differently in that mindset, or like how the last few years have been for traveling?
Yeah, I'll say definitely. I think the ways that you approach it will not be the same ways that we did, or generations before us. I think that where there's a will, there's a way. It will just look different. But like, if I looked at other people my age, they weren't doing what I was doing. I had to be like obsessed with wanting this to happen for myself and looking for opportunities and avenues and like applying to study abroad scholarships and like I really had to want to make it happen for myself. So I think it will look different for this generation, but you can always start locally. You can always do that solo trip in your own town. It doesn't have to be to Fiji. Like, start experiencing those feelings and those lessons learned where you are, where you can afford to go, and yeah, I'll just say that if you want to make it happen, you can always make it happen. There's a way. It may be delayed by a year. It may not be the college spring break trip you wanted it to be, but it can have just as much of an impact on your life.
Yeah. I really like that, and I really appreciate your question. I think echoing some of the thoughts, I think it's never too late to start. For me, I genuinely, as a kid, I wrote it down in my journal. I was like, I'm gonna take my first trip abroad when I am 27, and it happened when I was 19, and it happened sooner for me. Um, and I think that just having that faith and starting small is very important. Um, I'm a big advocate for starting exploration in your own backyard, or like using the city you're in to go to places you haven't been to get that spark going is really important. As far as the question goes, so like what travel is going to look like in the pandemic, what was it like in the pandemic and after? It was very different for me. Like when I went to Edinburgh and I was backpacking like Scottish Highlands. This was fall, like October 2020. Something I noticed is like there were not a lot of cultural experiences I was a part of, but I've since learned that Edinburgh and like other cities around the world have started again, like offering cultural experiences again. So there are things that, you know, that are gonna be a little different for the next like couple of years until we're normal again. But still I was able to like get a car, still I was able to hike, still I was able to be in nature, which was still meaningful. So it may not be exactly as things were like in 2019 and before, but it's still a wonderful place and it's still a wonderful world, and there's still so much that can be explored.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, I think appreciation is huge. Like doing what you can with what you have, and not trying to compare it to, oh, well, on Instagram they have these photos, or
Yes.
like my dad was able to do this. Like, go where you can and enjoy what you have.
I agree.
Hello.
Hi.
Gotcha.
Hi, my name's Attica, and so excited to have you all here. Traveling has always been a huge passion for me. It's when I felt my most free, which is one of the reasons why I've always ventured out. I've lived abroad. I would do it again, even with a 5-year-old. But it always feels very personal, right? Like it's a personal journey, it's a personal experience. And we've actually had a lot of brainstorming around how would we partner with content creators, with digital nomads who are traveling the world, but how could we do that in a way that's authentic? Have you seen experiences that would allow a way for brands to partner, but not where it's so expected or so forced, and it starts to just get a sense of inauthenticity?
Yeah, as a content creator, I'll speak to this. I think Gen Z is like the perfect time to do what you're trying to do, because I think our generation is kind of getting sick of the competition of having like the best photo, or like going to the top, like the first page. I literally call it getting to the second page of Google, because I don't want to go where y'all been. Like I saw it. Paris is, I get it. So I'm trying to go somewhere new. And I think that we are really seeking out authentic experiences in that way. And so we're the perfect people to tell these stories, because like honestly, my content, it's like very, it is what it is. It feels like my best friend's on FaceTime with me and I'm in these places, you know? And I want to tell the story as authentically as it is, including the negatives of the experience, including the hard parts, like me crying in the tent, like, girl, this is not easy. I want to tell those stories because those are the relatable moments that people, like the perfectly curated moment is cute, but what people actually are going to get when they get there is, you know, more of the authentic experience. So that's what we want to share. So there are definitely ways I think creators are taking it upon themselves to be like, yeah, I don't really care what the algorithm says. I'm going to share the story the way it is. And actually that resonates a lot more.
Yeah. I want to add to that, like, this rings really true. And I think in my experience as well, like, being authentic about who you are, allowing creators to tell the story from their perspective rather than being like, oh, look at my fancy bag. I used this to travel when I was crying in a tent or on top of a mountain. Like, it you know, doesn't really work. I think honestly, like opportunities like these, if this was content itself, like this is one of the most beautiful experiences for me personally, to get to tell my story as it is without any alteration from like the agency or from Google, right? And so if we can encourage creators to be able to tell their stories and maybe have something more subtle on the side, maybe a coffee mug in the video or a backpack in the bag or like a sponsored by note at the end, to me that's much more like the sort of content I consume and respect as a Gen Z, versus like, look at my shoes, you know? So yeah.
I want to add to that. It's kind of like a shameless plug, but I kind of got to throw it in there. So one of the unique things about us last year with our flash mob tour, once we got about to like city 3, so mind you, we did 10 cities last year. On average, we had 265 guys show up in each location. So you're talking about over 2,000 guys we had come together around the world. What I realized is we had guys, TJ, Ramil, Wealth, these guys of 10 cities on their own dime flew to 7 different locations. So what I realized after that is they're coming to the individual locations. They're not coming strictly for, yeah, we just have the flash mob and you see that big photo op. But now Friday we have a meet and greet.
Yeah.
Friday we film our
Behind the
YouTube
scenes.
series. After Saturday after the flash mob, we partner with a local black-owned bar. We partner with a promoter and we have a brunch experience that we go to. This year we added a service day. So in Baltimore, we partnered with Synergy Baltimore and gave out 600 bags of food and toiletries to the West Side Baltimore community. And we have guys that are volunteering wanting to come. So to your point, it's like partnering with, and I say with us, because we're actually fostering community connectivity. We're fostering the experiences. These guys are traveling city to city to city to city because they want to participate in. I love telling the story quickly of a guy named TJ. TJ lives in Savannah, Georgia. He came to 7 cities. The reason he went to 7 cities is because he's a juvenile correctional officer. Obviously, most of the kids that he worked with, they're not bad kids. They just grew up in unfortunate situations. Mom wasn't around, older brother's a drug dealer, kind of the standard story within that. So because of this, TJ's like the only person within his community that these kids see that look like him. So they're excited because, you know, oh, TJ, you going to New York this month? TJ, you going to LA this month? TJ, you going to Chicago this month? So they see other black men that look like them. And that's what they can expose and be access to. So TJ's going to these events, not even for himself. He's paying for this on his own dime. He's paying for this because when he goes back to that juvenile correction facility, he has young 11, 12, 13, 14-year-old, 15-year-old kids that are looking at us, and they can see other black men that look like him that are doctors, lawyers, engineers, and philanthropists, and they can be something more when they get out of this juvenile correctional facility. That's travel, right? A lot of times, when I'll get on touch base on this later, when you tell the brands, well, we want to talk about a staycation. Who gives a fuck about a staycation when I got these kids that are traveling on the world and we're impacting lives? So those are the kind of things from travel experiences that you can kind of really focus on. And those are the kind of one of the things I would kind of say, like, as brands, look deeper. Even from like when I'm sure you guys can attest to some of these examples. We went to Ghana, we partnered with Ghana People, which is a tourism platform. They have about 45,000 followers on Instagram. Guy named Junior, he's a photographer, videographer, and tour guide. He curates individual experience of everybody to work with. So rather than partnering with just a person that's going to Ghana, partner with him, right? Because he's gonna want hosting these experiences. He's gonna tap in and be able to tap in and curate these individual experiences. He's also a content creator for these other people that are coming to experience as well. So I would just say it kind of just takes your time doing the research and just getting out of the mindset of the example you gave. Oh, I'm in Mykonos with this bag. People seeing that. That's not really actually gonna encourage anybody to get on this flight, encourage anybody to actually purchase this product.
Period.
Hi, Gabby and Ezza. I'm Erin, and I have a question for you all to wax poetic on. What do you gain when you leave home behind?
I love this question. Yeah, this is a question I feel like I'm a little cry about. But really, the answer is everything. It's really tough. It's really tough to leave home behind. I have 2 little sisters I love, and a family I love. But what's gained by traveling? Oh my God, I'm like not that emotional. But really, it's such a poetically waxing. It's really true. Like, you don't know what you don't know about yourself and about the world around you until you see it for yourself. And I have so many stories about me having preconceived notions before I go somewhere, and then going and being like, I was so wrong. Girl, I was so wrong. I didn't even know how wrong I could be until I went and saw it for myself. And I was so happy because I'm like, there's so much potential for good in the world. There's so much potential for like positive opportunities, and that's why I do what I do, is that I think everyone deserves access to that. And so, oh my God, really, you can gain the world by leaving home, and the more you learn about the world around you, the more you can learn about yourself, and it's led to so many moments of self-discovery and impact for me, and like changed my life's mission, and like the legacy I want to leave behind. It has come to me through the experiences I've had while traveling and meeting people, and like, this is a travel experience I'm having, and I'm meeting her, and it's really everything.
It's really beautiful.
Sorry.
No, so much. I think I really, really, really echo everything Gabby's saying. But I think for me personally, like, there was this movie, Brave. It was a Pixar movie, and I really loved it. It was about this princess Merida, who was told by her mom that she needs to get ready for her prince who's gonna marry her because it's Scottish tradition, or I don't know, Irish tradition. And she wanted to climb mountains, and she wanted to ride horses, and she wanted to shoot arrows. And I saw that movie and I was 14, and I went crying to my mom, and I was like, Mom, I don't ever want to have an arranged marriage. And she was like, dude, you're 14, you're fine. And I was like, but this happens. Like, my cousin who's 14 is engaged, and like my cousin who's 16, she has proposals coming in. And even though I come from an educated family, like, my doors are going to be closer because I'm born a girl. And so for me, travel very much, like, the point it really hit was like showing me how free I can be, and that I can be and am my own person, and that I don't need to live and exist in societies where like my fate depends on who I'm marrying. Like, since I was a kid, like, the lullabies that were told to me and my sister were about, oh, one day you're gonna be someone's bride. Like, I was not even able to speak, and these were the words I heard, where my greatest value is as a bride. And I still remember, like, once I was like, this was like right before I was applying for colleges, and I was really set on studying in Pakistan, and I was very set on being a doctor like my dad and my family was. And someone encouraged me to apply to colleges, but I was studying hard for a test, and someone comes up to me and she's like, why are you studying hard? It was a relative, and I told her, like, oh, because I want to have shots at scholarships and be able to maybe one day go abroad, maybe for a master's or something like that. And she's like, yeah, but for what end? You're gonna be someone's wife at the end of the day, and you have to raise kids, so your education doesn't matter. And saying that to a 17-year-old who left her house for the sake of education is extremely crushing and demoralizing. And so for me, like, traveling is spiritual. What is gained for me is, again, realizing that my body is mine, and realizing that the narratives that are told in one culture are not encompassing of the whole world. And there's invalid narrative about women in the US and other countries I've been to as well. But because I've been traveling and seeing how things are in Korea, I can call Americans out, or I can call Germans out, or I could call Pakistanis out, that this is not how you treat the people in the room with you. And that you don't tell your sisters to sit at a different table when she's trying to eat dinner with you, or sit at a different conference when an important person's at the table of conversation. So yes, a lot is gained, and I encourage everyone to travel, because for me it was a story about my gender, but everyone has a story like this that they have been trying to rewrite. And for me, travel has been a tool. I know we went over time, but there was no way I
that was
could.
fantastic.
Thank you both.
That was fantastic.
Thank you.
Yes, so once again, thank you, Ezza Naveed, women's mobility advocate, and Gabby Beckford, content creator and Gen Z travel expert. So appreciate you all. So what we're gonna do here, so Drip Gone Digital, so like these first few panels have done a great job of getting us immersed in the metaverse and how Gen Z is helping us explore new environments. But, you know, it's even kind of helping them explore and, as she said, express themselves. So I love both of you all telling your personal story. Vulnerability is a sign of strength. So it's okay to be emotional. So continue to share your joy and inspire others. Let's see how that's coming to life with a quick video. And then after that, we can grab lunch and continue our conversation at 1 p.m.
Thank you.
The real world isn't always the most welcoming place for Gen Z. That's why Gen Z is headed to the metaverse. Whether it's creating a character in games or an avatar on social, the digital world gives Gen Z a safe space to express who they truly are. In fact, 52% of users feel more like themselves in the metaverse than IRL. Thanks to creators like Paige Piskin and Amira Virgil, there's a whole new frontier of virtual possibilities.
I wanted to create content around it, and I couldn't because I couldn't accurately depict the characters. I couldn't, make Sims with like darker skin tones. I couldn't make characters with darker skin tones with certain hairstyles. The darker skin tones were gray. When I created the mod pack for Sims, I had no idea that it would have this much impact or that this many people would have the same issue that I did.
These innovative pushes for inclusivity may explain why 79% say their friends in the metaverse accept them for who they are instead of what they look like outside of the space. And though the metaverse is art imitating life, with that kind of achievement, we hope that life begins to imitate art.
Now it is time to eat. Thank you, ladies, for joining us.